Transhumanism is always taking the human being experience to the next level through technology. Be anything from exoskeleton suits to brain implants. You're probably looking at in the next 10 to 15 years being able to upload large chunks of your brain into a kind of a consciousness of some sort in the cloud. This is where a lot of the stuff gets really fuzzy, and we're all in the Wild West. Nobody knows where the laws are going to end up. I mean, I think death, the version of death, is definitely going to change.
The word transhumanism, like, what does that mean to you?
Really, what it is nowadays, transhumanism is a social movement of many millions of people around the world that want to use science and technology to radically modify the human body, modify the human mind. Be anything from exoskeleton suits to brain implants, even things like driverless cars or robots inside your house. But transhumanism is always taking the human being experience to the next level through technology.
I guess the question that jumps out immediately, right? Like, if we're modifying and changing ourselves, our bodies, are we fundamentally changing who we are? Or is this kind of just the next step in our evolution?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, people are always worried with transhumanism that we're going to become some kind of cyborg entity and be so different. But I don't think we're going to lose our inherent values. I think the thing you and I value right now is that, well, we're kind to one another, we care about each other, we have each other's best interests involved. I think a lot of the mutual ethics and morals will probably pass on no matter what type of things the human being becomes in the next 100 or 1,000 years or whatever it is. So even if I put a bunch of chip implants in my brain and I have a cyborg arm and a synthetic, heart and prosthetic legs, I don't think that's going to fundamentally change me much. Maybe when I upload my mind into, for example, an artificial intelligence, that will become something substantially different. But even then, I still think I'm going to retain my core values because I don't want to lose those. So even if transhumanism does changes, I don't think we lose a lot of what it means to be a human being.
How close are we to this, right? Like, the thing that I think of, I'm a Star Wars person, so I think of like Luke losing his hand and he gets the robotic hand. I feel like people would be okay with that. But how close are we to the idea of, like, I'm going to upload my consciousness into the cloud? Like, where are we in that kind of possession of this becoming a reality?
Sure. Well, about 7 or 8 years ago, they had the first telepathy between a person in France and India where they said hello to each other through the mind using brainwave reading headsets. Today, you can basically read a novel using this type of brainwave interface technology. So, I mean, it's completely like just gone through the roof and how fast it's increasing. So, if you take that trajectory of science, technology out, you're probably looking at in the next 10 to 15 years being able to upload large chunks of your brain into a kind of a consciousness of some sort in the cloud, at least one that mimics you very closely. But is that actually you? I think that's still 30 to 50 years away. So we're able to just have like a perfect identical version of ourselves.
Are we ready for that, though?
Well, I mean, that's that's the $1 million question, and the answer is probably no. I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Oxford, and a lot of the ethicists are in the philosophy department where I'm at are worrying about these issues, and most people don't think we are because technology has increased so much faster than morality, than the development of morality, and so much faster also in terms of politics. This is why you have presidential candidates in debates, they never talk about artificial intelligence. They never talk about genetic evidence. They never talk about radically enhancing the human being because it's just too wild. It'll cost them votes. But the reality is, in Silicon Valley, this is all they do, all they talk about. This is where the biggest companies in the world are, where all the money is. So yes, we're probably not ready for a lot of this stuff, but because capitalism works the way it does, it's probably going to come. So the big question is really what can we do? And we just need more ethicists to get involved and more politicians to really speak their mind, to try to come up with regulatory framework for a lot of these wild and absolutely insane ideas that are out there that are going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years.
I hope this doesn't come off as rude or offensive or anything like that, but I'll just be direct to kind of get the point across in my mind. Right? Like 10, 20 years ago, if you came forward and I was hearing this, I'd be like, this guy, what are you talking about? Now I'm like, whoa, we got to start We got to figure this out. Is there any worry in your mind that, like, by the time we finally do this, it's too late?
Well, to be honest with you, the big worry is not about whether we do this too late. The biggest worry is who does it first. Because in the last 10 years, I've seen China take the lead in a lot of these technologies. And one of the reasons is because China is a secular nation. They don't have a kind of a Judeo Christian framework that would, for example, stop them from doing genetic editing or stop them from trying to create a cyborg person with an AI mind, these kinds of things. They don't have those same kind of cultural baggage that the United States and other Western countries have. And so the question isn't, in my mind, so much should we do it? The question is who does it first? And who does it first who's actually going to kind of lead the world in the way forward. So we have to be very, even Vladimir Putin has said from Russia that, whoever controls AI is going to end up controlling the world. The last thing we want is him to think like that and control an AI. We have to get our politicians to pick up this ball. Whether we like these radical technologies like genetic editing and artificial intelligence, we better be the first ones to create it, the first ones to lead it forward in the world, because it's much better if democracy leads it than, let's say, a totalitarian government like China.
You talked about this a little bit, the idea of religion getting into it, right? And that is a thing in the United States, to put it lightly, right? Like, how can we adjust the idea that, no, but God created us this way? You're messing with this, you're messing with him.
Yeah, no, as I've traveled across the country talking to people about technology and transhumanism specifically, it really is divided along lines of religion. Most people think, most Christians think the body is a temple created by God, and that temple is not to be messed with. Whereas transhumanists believe that we can overcome death, we can have godlike characteristics through technology, we can overcome these things. And then somewhere in between is everyone else, who's like, well, we like modern medicine, and if we lose an arm, for example, fighting in a war in Afghanistan, we'd like that person to have a robotic arm so that they can play the piano again, or hold their wife, or grab a beer, or whatever it is. So somewhere in between, we have to find the middle ground. What I try to tell people is that if Jesus was going around the world healing people, healing the sick, making the blind see, these are very transhumanist traits. I mean, transhumanism is leading the charge to overcome blindness. Transhumanism has already 100% overcome deafness because we have cochlear implants if people want to have them. So, if you look at it from a medical perspective, especially helping disabled people, senior citizens, then I think a lot of Christians will accept transhumanism as a proper method forward. But you just have to be careful you leave out the godlike stuff. As soon as you start talking about godlike stuff and becoming enhanced, like beings that, then I think a lot of people get scared. So I try to tone it down a little bit, unless I'm trying to cause a ruckus, to get more and more people interested in the movement. Because in the end of the day, we're just interested in people's health and their ability to live the best life. Yeah, sometimes that best life is going to be filled with technology.
This may be kind of pie in the sky stuff, right? But does this get really complicated in the sense that, look, the Supreme Court has said that corporations are people. If I've got a robotic left arm, is that a person? Does it have rights aren't that are different from mine? Who owns that arm? Do I own the arm? Does the corporation who made the arm own the arm? Like, how's that going to work?
Yeah, and in an emergency, who controls that arm?
Right.
Will the government have some kind of overrides, thing? And you're just about to like do something, I mean, yeah, this is. That's why I said again and again to young people going into the world, what professions would I say? Go into cybersecurity, because whatever happens, technology is increasing, and we're going to need more and more autonomy from people that control this technology. But I think it'll probably be like your iPhone, where you own the phone to some extent, you have all the privileges over it, whatever technology it is, and you could utilize it in that way. But then there are a lot of people that are already having implants put inside their body and whatnot, and yes, they own the actual implant, but they don't own the technology, and that technology can then be upgraded while it's in your body just through Wi-Fi signals and whatnot. And this becomes a very challenging scenario of privacy, ownership, and the new world, I guess. But I think as long as we maintain our sense of ownership, self ownership, I think we're going to be fine. We're just going to insist that the technology we put inside ourselves actually belongs to us. But that becomes a little tricky because now you have, for example, Alexa will record a conversation of a husband and wife and then use that in a divorce court or something. That's, wild. This is where a lot of the stuff gets really fuzzy. And it's, we're all in the Wild West. Nobody knows where the laws are going to end up. I wrote about a piece where a woman claimed that she was raped in virtual reality and that the rape was a real rape in terms of legal justice for that person. This story happened in Australia. The brand new ideas that no court has any laws in the books for. So we're writing history as it happens here in many ways.
When we kind of get into this, right? Like how can we balance the fairness aspect of it in the rich people are going to have the bionic implants and the lower income people, well, you got nothing. Sorry, man. Right? Like how do you kind of balance the societal inequities of all of that as we get going where some people have this and other people you don't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's one of my primary concerns, and I just hope I'm not going to end up being an advocate for some transhumanist movement that really leaves the world a giant dystopia, in 50 years. I'm a big supporter of something called a universal basic income for the very reason that I just think if you need to create a floor for people to at least have enough to eat and shelter and the kinds of in healthcare and things like that. But outside of that, I think it's really up to a lot of the very rich people, the billionaires, and the government to try to make sure that the technology is spread evenly across the site. The good thing, though, is that like a cell phone technology over time does become increasingly very cheap. And even, in the most remote villages in Africa, people have cell phones. What they still don't have, though, is clean water or enough food. So I'm hopeful that the transhumanist technology will make its way through every level of society. That doesn't mean, though, that we're going to have equality, and it doesn't mean we're going to have a good, just, fair society. That requires people, billionaires, government regulation, people making solid, hard decisions that may take some money off the top line, but really help out even the class of society so we're on a better plane.
Where is the kind of like we're based in the United States and most of our audience is the United States, but we have listeners all over the place. Where do kind of countries and areas like where do they rank in terms of all right, they've got the best scientific development, they've got the best societal. Like who's kind of at the forefront of this and where does like the US rank in kind of it?
Well, I mean, ground zero for transhumanism and this technology is still Silicon Valley. There's no question that they're leading the charge. But I would say China is catching up very quickly. They made a massive, like kind of national declaration to develop AI by 2030, and they may end up surpassing us. We've been going back and forth on who has the fastest supercomputer every year. Like they take us over, we take them over. On another hand, there's a lot of weird stuff happening. Like a lot of biotechnology companies are no longer doing their experiments in the United States because the process is like 8 to 10 years to even get a drug through the pipeline. So what they do is they'll go down to Honduras, or they'll go down to El Salvador, or they'll go to somewhere in Eastern Europe, and they'll do the trials, which will take half or a quarter of the time. And then those companies will essentially move there, but still have the drugs come out. These are radical drugs that can cure cancer or what, hepatitis, whatever. So that's happening too. So it's not even really um, where transhumanists are trying to start the companies and be located, a lot of times it's they go for the business environment that's simplest to them, and then try to utilize that so that that's the best place for them to develop their companies.
Right, we've talked a lot about the kind of the benefits of this, I guess. Like what do you when you look at it like, man, we've really got to make sure this doesn't happen.
The benefits are innumerable. I mean, transhumanism will make people live longer. It will bring more prosperity to their lives. I mean, science and technology have a really great history. If you look back hundreds of years, like we just don't die from cavities anymore. People used to die all the time from an infection from a cavity. So science and technology has a really good history of making people live better, longer, and with more prosperity. And so we believe transhumanism will continue in that vein. Therefore, it should be supported. The question, though, is some of these technologies are so radical, like artificial intelligence controlling nuclear weapons, for example, or genetic editing, where you can genetically edit yourself to have a smarter brain than your neighbor. Is that fair? especially if you can afford it and he can't. So these are some of the more fundamental questions I think ethicists, philosophers, and transhumanists have to address before they sort of happen. But I think that's the big dilemma right now happening in the world, is to figure that all out.
Are you ready for some harder slash listener submitted questions?
Yes, of course.
Your vision of the future, right? Like when you look at what you think the future could be, how far away do you think that we are from that right now?
Well, it really changes. I think I tend to think of it in terms of 10 to 15 years and then 30 to 50 and 100 years. So 10 to 15 years, we got some big progress happening on the horizon with life extension. That means 3D bioprinting organs, artificial hearts, genetic editing therapies so that we don't get, you can't get HIV, or maybe you can even make it so you can't get monkeypox, things like that. So I think that's the 10, 15-year window where we develop a lot of things to make us live better. But that's not very exciting. I think what really gets exciting is when you start talking about uploading your consciousness, something like I mentioned earlier. Probably 20 to 40 years away, we will start experimenting with that. People will start trying to do that stuff. But it gets really wild when you get to the 100-year window, because then you're either virtual avatars living in machines, maybe you're off in space, maybe you have multiple selves. Like it's not just, don't think yourself just you upload yourself and then you're in the machine. Actually, your human body will almost certainly still be here. And when you upload yourself, you may not just upload one version of yourself. You may have 100 copies. Might be 100 Zoltans running around doing his thing. And and that becomes like, what's your family then? Well, all these little mini me's. But, the transhumanist world is really bizarre when you start taking it out that many years, because AI and consciousness expansion, your brain is probably going to have, 1,000 or 5,000 times more intelligence than we have now, maybe 1 million times, and progressing at a much quicker rate than before. If you think what's happening with technology now is quick, just imagine how Moore's law is going to apply in 30 or 40 years when technology is still doubling. So I think we'll all at some point have to put in implants or have brainwave headsets that connect us to all the machines around us just for convenience sake. But I think, there'll always probably be a human left over somewhere on planet Earth. But if you don't embrace technology, there's no question you're going to get left behind. And I think on a final note, the 30 to 50-year future also involves getting off planet. You see people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos pushing these space companies. We're just at the very beginning of this. We want to create bodies that are able to withstand pressures outside Earth's environmental system, so that we can go off planet, and not just outside our inside our solar system, but really into the galaxies. See if there's other life out there. See if anything else is worth humanity's time to kind of ponder. So I think getting off planet is going to be another huge transhumanist mission.
One of the things that I've always seen about is like the idea of kind of being immortal. And for me personally, I guess I'll ask this from a personal, like I don't really want to be immortal. Do you think that we could really handle that? The idea of living forever?
I also am afraid of immortality. I'm not sure. I want to have the ability to overcome death, and the specter of death is a huge negative influence in my life. But I also want to retain the freedom to end my life if I want. And maybe, you have to understand, like, it's not just, there's even transhumanist technologies like cryonics out there where you could be brought back to life even today at some other point in the future if they develop the science. And then you choose to live 10 more years and say, this isn't for me, and I want to go back to sleep. I mean, I think death, the version of death, is definitely going to change as we get into the future. We may like wake up every 100 years, just check in, and then decide it's not for us. And some people may decide to like say, look, you can never bring me back or never resurrect me or completely take away, so I'm just ashes or something like that. But honestly, with 3D printing technology and the different scanning of your brain, we can already start to scan memories. So if you can start doing that, you can 3D print out anything, including an exact replica of yourself. And you may say, oh, it's not me. But that you won't know that. It will still 100% think it's you. And so you get into this weird, like Hollywood time machine kind of, I guess, movie scape where no one's really sure what is real and who you are. But the reality is, you're probably going to want to live and experience it, even if you don't want to live forever. So I like the idea of living as long as possible, but I also like the idea of having the possibility to say no to living forever. Again, I'm not even sure that's possible given the way that we're going to have these scanning technologies and ability to 3D bioprint ourselves. There maybe have to be do not resurrect clauses in our wills. here in the next 50 or 100 years, because everybody will be able to be brought back to life, at least as they were upon their moment of death, just because we've scanned down to the atomic level what every single memory and brain component and blood vessel was in their body.
I don't like the idea of living forever, but I do like the idea of like being able to check in every 100 years. Like that would be pretty cool. Then I'd be worried about somebody like accidentally deleting the server one day or something like that. 2024 is coming, man. You gonna go for it again?
So, I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Oxford. I think I'm going to finish that degree before I run for office again. It's given me a lot of insight into the academic world, it's giving me more credibility to being there. So I doubt I'm going to run in 2024. I am watching politics, though. I'm watching the Forward Party, wondering if maybe there's going to be some type of candidacy possibilities there, and what Andrew Yang has done. I'm not really this moment siding with any single party at the moment because I'm more of a science candidate. But it is possible I would run again in 2028, and in fact, I probably almost certainly will. I just kind of feel like I should take care of my graduate studies first and take a break. I'd run a couple campaigns; they all did pretty well, but sometimes it's best to amass your resources, gain a little bit more popularity in your field, and then try to strike.
What do you think of like? Look, I feel like one of the early ventures into this, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really know that much about this stuff. But I feel like one of the early ventures is kind of the metaverse, and that seems to have flopped pretty hard, at least right now. Do you think that is that a sign that this idea as a whole is not viable, or just that we're not ready, or just that we don't like Facebook? I guess, what do you kind of think about the whole metaverse idea?
Well, to begin with, I think, if we associate with Facebook, we're not going to like it. Facebook is, in my opinion, on the decline just because of management issues and just because of perception issues. I do think virtual reality holds huge promise, though. I think another problem with virtual reality is kind of being tied into the crypto and blockchain market and whatnot. And look, that's fine. That's all very interesting stuff. But a lot of that hasn't actually had any practical value. I just recently gave a speech though in second, not Second Life, it's a group called Spatial, and it was great. And about 100 people showed up, and I was invited to this event, and I thought, wow, that's a lot easier than having to fly to Europe to give a 30-minute talk and doing that. So I see a huge future in the virtual world just because the convenience sake. But they haven't made it enough where I really experience it even remotely the same as the physical world. So until they do that, maybe that'll be happening suits where you really put on full gear and it's not just the goggles. I don't know exactly what it is that's going to make it, or maybe it's going to be some kind of like little beam that shows on you, so you can be in the virtual world that measures all your movements, and that way you can start immersing yourself and you feel like you're immersed. I've done some virtual reality stuff like jumping off buildings, and that actually feel incredibly real. So if they can do that, then I think the metaverse will take off. But right now, I feel it's just still a little too geeky, and it doesn't feel that real to me. So I like the real world still. But they're getting better every year at doing that. And hopefully, metaverse will not really be a Facebook association, but just become a technology association through all these other companies. And then I think we'll be more inclined to adapt it. But it has had a little bit of a shaky start. But a lot of these technologies have shaky starts, and then all of a sudden they finally figure out their groove.
I interviewed an ice climber one time, and the thing that he said is like, everybody thinks you're an idiot until they don't. And that's usually a sign that you're kind of on the right track, right? Like he said, if everybody thought I was crazy, then it's probably going to be worth me doing it.
No, and this is happening all over. Like 10 years ago when I started really promoting transhumanism, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, this guy's out of his mind." And now that AI and all these other things, like for example, Yale University is reanimating pig's brains with electrode, and they're recreating consciousness that on brain mass looks basically identical to the real consciousness of the living pig brain. So all of a sudden, we have another way, for example, to overcome death potentially. And these are real experiments that are already taking place. If you had told somebody that just 15 years ago, they would have thought that was impossible, and that was wacko and something crazy. So it always seems crazy, but you give something 10, 20, 30 years, and really it catches up, and all of a sudden lo and behold, we're in the transhumanist age.
I'll be completely honest. When we first started this podcast 4 years ago, we interviewed a guy who was a futurist, and he talked about transhumanism, and I left being like, this guy's kind of crazy. And now I feel like, man, we better figure this out pretty fast because it's coming quick, right?
Yeah, no, and let me just tell you, like the philosophy department at University of Oxford, if you had said 20 years ago, they would be debating artificial intelligence all day long and the ethics of it. That would have seemed completely insane to the oldest philosophy department in the world. And yet now today, I can tell you, the ethics of artificial intelligence are like literally on the tip of everyone's tongue there because they realize if you want to make a difference in the world of philosophy, in the world of where humanity is going, this is where expertise is needed. And there are massive structural changes like that happening all around the world in all different types of universities, nonprofits, governments, as people start grappling with the fact that wow, technology is really the driver of the world and also of culture as well as the military. So whoever's not in control of that, whoever's not dealing directly with that, is really missing the boat and will be left behind.
Yeah. I interviewed a guy one time I think he was a military general. He's like, you got two choices: get on the tank or get run over by the tank.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
Last thing, man, like if you were to kind of look at movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of what vision of which one would you say like, ooh, I think they got it right. Like that's probably what it would really be like.
There's nothing movies. First off, I'm a huge fan of The Matrix, and I do think that there's a very strong chance that with mind uploading, we will come to a premise where you actually can live inside virtual worlds. Hopefully, not powered by machines. I think actually something very similar to Star Trek is probably the most likely, where we will eventually have genetic editing capabilities to create all sorts of creatures. Those creatures will span out around the universe, and then humans will probably be cyborgs and interact with machines. May actually go around the world and interact with them and have adventures and whatnot. And that's not that different than Star Wars. But I think if you have to ask me what's one of the most interesting movies out there right now, it's the movie Her. And Her is the story of an AI that develops but decides it doesn't want to hang out with the human beings and ultimately leaves. And that's a very humbling, I think, thought. It could easily happen to people, even if we have minds that are sort of cyborg or have chip implants to try to connect with AI. Artificial intelligence in here in 20, 30, 40 years may just say, we're going to lead you and go to the singularity. We're just not interested in your human race. It's almost like something us looking at ants. You don't really take much of a care of ants because we just don't consider their brains worth, focusing on, except if you're an ant person, whatever. But I think at some point AI becomes so smart, they may not care about our little 3 pounds meat that we carry on our shoulders. It's just not sophisticated enough for them, and they will also leave us behind. So I think the movie Her is an excellent example of how technology could be very humbling for humanity in the long run.
That's pretty much all the questions that I have. Is there anything else that you think that we missed, or people want to get involved, want to learn more? What should they do?
Well, the one thing is, there was a documentary, Immortality or Bust, that Amazon Prime has picked up that was made on my 2016 presidential campaign, but it's really a movie came out recently in 2020, about transhumanism as a whole. And I go around in a giant bus and visit everybody, all these transhumanists across the country, exploring their personalities and trying to figure out, where the world's going to go. So if you have a chance, go to Amazon Prime or a lot of other places have it and watch Immortality or Bust. And other than that, if you're interested in transhumanism, Facebook, despite my not liking Facebook very much, has a ton of groups, a lot of Twitter groups as well now, or Twitter followers on transhumanism, or just Google it and you'll find a lot of stuff. I have a ton of books out there, 8 books, Transhumanist Wager and whatever, so you can read some of my work. But Immortality or Bust, the documentary, it's just an hour and a half. It's a really fun way to explore transhumanism because we had a giant bus that was shaped like a coffin that we drove all across the country, and that's how we campaigned for transhumanism during one of my presidential campaigns.
Would you want to be a cyborg or a robot? Like if they said, all right, we can replace this with a robot part, would you be cool with that?
I mean, perverted 12-year-old John says, of course, give me a robotic something. I mean, of course. Why wouldn't I? I mean, as long as I can have full control over whatever limb is going to be a cyborg. I mean, I don't need it turning on itself.
Okay, but we're not talking about like where somebody loses it and then they get a prosthetic. I mean, hey, this new model is available. You gonna trade in the left arm? Like, would you do that? Would you get it? Would you upgrade yourself?
I would, but you know what? The more I think about it, I don't think I would upgrade what you want to jump to say first. Like everyone goes, yeah, I want the arm or maybe maybe like a awesome eye or something. I think I would do like a back. Like give me a back that doesn't hurt and that I'm not gonna have any pain in. Like that'd be awesome.
I wouldn't really want to replace the parts of me that I feel dictate my sensations with the world, like my hands and feet, arms, legs, eyes, senses.
Penis.
But in terms of like my back, like, yeah, or my knees, that's an easy choice. Shoulders, like, yeah, replace that tomorrow.
So at what age though? What age do you think you would start to consider the replacement
40.
or the upgrade? I guess the upgrade.
As soon as I started to decline, soon as I was physically starting to like, as soon as things physically started to hurt a little bit, or like this isn't working the way that it used to, which I would say that I'm at that age now, where like I'll go to jump playing with my kids and like, wait a minute, that's a lot different. I would replace that now.
I would probably do it right around 40.
What about like uploading yourself to the cloud? Would you be, do you think that could you be like a fully digital person, like upload your consciousness?
Ooh, that's a well. So my consciousness, even when physical me is gone, my consciousness would still be around for others to like look at forever, right?
Yeah.
Well, I feel bad for whoever would see those images. Yeah, sure, why not? I'm remember was it a decade ago or whatever when the cloud was really becoming a thing and everybody was like, don't put pictures in there, don't put this in there, they're gonna get hacked and leaked, and I'm not scared of that at all. I mean, bring on the hackers. I don't give a shit. No one gives a shit about like if regular person nudes are hacked, right? Like they're not looking for that on my phone.
This is what worries me, I think, ultimately about this kind of technology, right? Is that we started out trying to have this philosophical discussion, and then ultimately it came down to nudes in the cloud, right? Like we can already see this with basically any technology that we have, is that we are going to go to the most default use of it that we can, which is basically sex. Like we're going to upload ourselves to the cloud, and we're not going to do it to we're not going to do it to explore galaxies or universes or any kind of highfalutin thing. No, we're going to use it for basically porn.
Well, I mean, I think that if you think of most technology, that is ultimately what it ends up being a vessel for.
Well, we are still human beings at the end of it, right? And like we have one basic function that is hardwired into us. We're going to find a way to do that, whichever method that is.
I think I would only want to live forever. Maybe now that I think about it, maybe as an observer, just no one bother me, but I get to see history and time pass.
Yeah, I think my ultimate answer would be I want to be thawed out every 25 years, live for a year, then go back to sleep. All right. That's my question.
All right. Well, let's move on to some shout outs. We're going to make this nice and easy and quick today. So, Trey Regar, Jennifer Larson, Jessica Cunningham, Jonah Quinn, Dan Kusel, Katrina Jorgensen, Stevie Jalea, David Ancelet, and Zach Hemmerle. You all get the shout outs for today. Appreciate everyone like usual.
Do you have 2 shirts on? Just real quick.
Yes, I do. I do have 2 shirts on.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. First question for you is, was that all you had on that? Were you not going to crack some joke?
I just couldn't tell what was going on. I wasn't sure if you had 2 shirts on or one.
I have a polo and then an undershirt on underneath that. So,
okay.
For those of you who can't see this. All right. Would you give up your favorite meal for life or have to eat your favorite meal every day for a year?
Well, I mean, I pretty much do that already. So I would easily just eat my favorite meal every day for a year.
What is it? What is your favorite meal?
Tacos. Technically a burrito, but I feel more like it's a taco. I do not really distinguish in my mind the difference between a taco, a burrito, and an enchilada. I understand that they are different things, but in my mind, they are all exactly the same. It is meat, cheese, beans, sour cream, maybe some vegetables wrapped in a flour product of some sort. I don't distinguish between tacos, burritos, and enchiladas. I don't mean that to be offensive in any way to people, but I essentially they're all the same.
I'm not speechless too many times. I mean that might be one of the more ignorant things you've ever said on this podcast.
Okay, so if I take a taco, wrap it in a burrito, and give it to you, you're going to be like, nope, that's a taco. I can tell the taste difference. And if
Well,
I took a burrito inside, put it in a taco shell, you'd be like, nope, I know that that's a burrito and a taco. He's just trying to fool me. You don't know the difference.
yeah, I mean burritos usually have rice, so I would know that right away. Tacos don't usually have rice. So that's one difference.
But I could take a burrito stuffing, put it in a taco, and you're not going to know the difference.
I think I would.
You're going to be like, who put a burrito in my taco?
Probably.
That's not true whatsoever. Maybe enchilada because you put something on top of it, but that's the only reason. Otherwise, it's all the same thing.
I just feel like you're going to get way too heated. So let's just move on. Second question for you. Which one of these would you rather do for the rest of your life? Eat with a spoon or eat with a fork for the rest of your life?
Well, you have to eat with a spoon. How are you going to eat soup with a fork?
Just drink.
The only
drink
choice
it
is
out of the
spoon.
bowl.
Right, but what if you can't do that? Right, the only choice you can make is fork or is spoon. I'm sorry, you can do everything that you can do with a fork with a spoon, but you can't do everything that you can do with a spoon with a fork.
I would
It's
argue
as simple as that. Ramen noodles, anything.
I mean, ramen noodles you can eat with a fork.
Not very well. It's better to eat with a spoon.
I mean, I would say actually that there's more benefits in a fork than a spoon.
No, there's more benefit. The spoon can carry things. How are you going to eat peas or corn? You know how long it's going to take you to eat corn?
You know what? I had corn
this
evening for dinner, and I ate it with a fork. And I looked around, and I was the only person at my dinner table eating it with a fork. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I'm the problem with a fork. And then now having this conversation with you, I'm going to eat it with a fork for the rest of my life.
Right. I like that. And this is back to the general theme that we talk about on this podcast is your refusal to acknowledge your own shortcomings. And you double down.
No, actually, can I break from this for 1 second and talk about one quick driving issue I had?
God, this is what I'm talking about.
It's not my
every
fault.
Single time. Nothing is ever your fault. I'm not the one who should be using everyone else should use a fork. Right. What's the driving issue? And I'll look at it. I will be an impartial observer.
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm driving down a side street.
So upset.
I'm driving down a side street. There's a golf course on my left-hand side. You know, like people are golfing, right? Of course, as I'm just taking my time driving down the side street, somebody gets behind me and you can tell they got to go somewhere. So
they got to get to the tee time.
Sure.
I've actually had this happen to me.
So they're riding my butt. I get to a stop sign. I just stop. Like I just stop so I can look both ways, even though I probably didn't have to, but I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. They honk at me. But here's the thing. Little did I know that we were right next to a tee box. So when they honked, it must have disturbed the whoever was on the tee box, because all I hear is like yelling now. Like the golfer is yelling at the driver's back yelling back at the golfer, and I just drive away. I should have waited to see if anything came of it, because they were still yelling.
Stuck around.
I should have stuck around, but that wasn't my fault. It just but thankfully the golfer, because you know if he didn't yell at the driver, who knows what they would have done? Probably ran me into traffic.
Man, how long were you stopped at the stop sign before he honked?
I mean, I literally had just it was recent.
Did you full stop?
Yeah.
Okay, because there's safety precaution stop, which is like, man, you pretty much stop. And then there's this guy's on my ass. I'm going to full stop like I'm legally required to do.
I know what you're doing. I know what you're trying to do. And It wasn't me trying to be an asshole. I mean, I stopped because it was a 4-way stop sign by a golf course, so I thought it would be the
Was there any cars coming from any other direction?
no, not even close.
Okay, so you asshole stopped a little bit.
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah, so you
maybe.
assholes. Okay, how much did you asshole stop on a scale of 1 to 10? Be honest.
I mean, maybe a 3. I mean, it wasn't anything over. I just made sure that I had come to a complete
Okay.
stop.
So if you're saying that it's a 3, that probably means it's a 5, which warrants the honk.
It's not my
Was
fault.
it a full? How big of a horn was it? Was it like a beep, like a eh, or was it like a?
Yeah,
Was it a reminder, or was it like move asshole?
Yeah, it was like I'm tired of being behind you. Like move out of the way.
How fast were you going? What was the speed limit?
I don't know. It's between 20 and 25. I mean, I was going the speed limit, but I wasn't going above it. That's for sure.
It's not, you could like, look, you are legally in the clear, and you have a good argument to be like, what was I doing? But nobody, first of all, I'm not going the speed limit in a residential area. I'm doing 10, 5 over easily. And I'm also not completely stopped. So you encouraged it, and I'm going to have to go ahead and say it in the blame of this 64.
That's I knew you were gonna find a way to turn it back. Then as I'm driving away, my focus turned to the golfer, and I'm like, listen, it's a weekday morning.
Right. What are you so upset about?
Yeah, like what are you pissed off about? You're clearly not good or not that good because you're golfing on a weekday morning. I mean, Jesus.
Did anybody change their direction of travel in that? Like, did the person in the car start to get out of the car? Did the golfer come off the tee box?
Yeah,
Because if that happened, then you should have stopped. One of my great regrets in life is I'm pretty sure I saw a road rage fight coming and I didn't stick around long enough to see it. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, there definitely was the golfer came over to the fence and the car was still at the stop sign, like,
Okay, all right. Now that we've established that you were at fault.
Anyway, so pretty excited about this. I know you're not going to be excited about this probably, but second week in a row we're trying something new here.
2 in a row. John's on the biggest roll of his life.
I know. So basically, we put something on Twitter on Monday afternoons, and you get to decide the topic in which we talk about. And this week it was House of the Dragon, the new Game of Thrones prequel series. What we had for lunch this morning, the NFL, and something else that I already forgot about. But I can tell you that House of the Dragon won overwhelmingly. And, people must listen because we literally quadrupled our votes from last week. So check us out. Head over to Twitter Monday afternoons and vote. But anyways, getting back to House of the Dragon, I'm sure you have not seen it.
I saw it last night.
Oh, you did? Okay. So what are your thoughts? It's a prequel set 200 years before the show. It's about the Targaryens. What's your thoughts?
Needs to get a lot better. The difficulty is that mystique, I think, that really drew people in about Game of Thrones, like that first episode of what's going on here. There's a fantasy element to it that was cool, like the White Walkers were cool. The dragons alone aren't going to do that, right? The White Walkers were new. The dragons, like, man, I've seen dragons. Like, I'm not impressed by seeing another dragon. I've seen it. And there's not that level of intrigue. Like, because all the characters look kind of too much alike, and it's unclear who's who, and you're just waiting on somebody to die.
Well, there's no...
It's got to get a lot better.
There's no standout, like, character either, I feel. At least one didn't emerge from the first episode, other than the dragons. And it's like you kind of said, that was cool in Game of Thrones, that series. But on this, it's like, we know you have dragons. Like, I want to know more about, like, where'd you get your hair from? Tell me more about your kind.
That's what I think was so revolutionary about the original Game of Thrones, is that they pretty clearly established that Ned Stark was the main character. And like, okay, he's the main guy here. And then, if you don't know already, turn off for a second. Then they killed him. You're like, what?
Yeah.
They fucking killed him.
Well, shit. Technically, they, once again, spoiler alert. So you have 1 second here. But Yeah, in the first season of that, they kill him and the king. It's like, whoa, they kill both major male leads of the show.
Yeah, no, it didn't capture that.
Out of 5 stars, what are you giving the first episode? And will you watch
3.5.
And will you watch the second episode?
Yeah, but 3.5. But I'm not interested. Looking forward to the next one. Like, all right.
I made a stupid mistake the other day. We lost power here for a little while, and my Fitbit also lost power, so I didn't get a chance to charge it. So it was stuck at the time that the power died. That that it ran out of power. So I put it on the next day, and I'm getting up to like, I don't know, I think it was like 7,000 steps. I have a goal of 10,000 every day, and it hits. I wonder why the time was off. Right. It was like 11:57, 11:58. I'm like, well, it's only a couple hours behind. Whatever. I won't mess with it right now. It hits 12, and it reset. So when its power died, it must have been like 7 or 8 at night or whatever. And then when I put it back on in the morning, I'm like, oh, like I said, it's only a couple hours behind. And then it hit midnight and it reset, so I lost all my stats for the day.
Do you honestly think anyone is interested in that story?
Sure, I think everyone. I think people have had. I think people have had the same issues.
That is one of the things that I cannot stand when people are like telling me about, like, how many steps did you get? I don't care. That's one of the. We're gonna do a top 5 things you don't care when people talk about, and their step challenge is got to be one of the highest on that list.
It's not a step challenge. I just told you how many steps I try to get a day. I didn't say like.
How's that not a challenge?
I mean, I tell you, it works for me. It doesn't have to work for anybody. If it works for you, great.
For people who are listening who are younger in the 20s demographic, this is what your life is going to become. Where the most exciting thing that you're looking at on a daily basis is, well, how many steps am I going to get in today?
Listen, I got to tell you.
And he's looking at his Fitbit, excited. I bet you, do you tell your wife when you get a lot of steps? Are you like?
No, I don't. I actually don't really gloat at all. I wanted to tell the story on the podcast as we were talking about it.
Listen, that was definitely a story.
Just cut it.
What's the most steps you've gotten in a day there?
Delete it. Most steps in a day, 24,000.
I'm more just depressed for us as an age group, 30s, 40s age group, that this is what we're now like.
I didn't say that's where I'm
Honey,
at. I just said a story.
My Fitbit reset itself in the middle of the day.
You know what? No, I was about to say another story. Let's just go on to the top 5 here. I'm getting
this is how you're headed straight for a midlife crisis, right? It's this kind of behavior that's going to take you right into a midlife crisis, where you realized one day that like the most exciting thing was your Fitbit going wrong, and then you're going to take up like skydiving. Okay, are you ready for our top 5?
I am. This is harder than I thought. So
it's a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
So our top 5 is top 5 robots. What's your number 5?
Bender from Futurama.
Are you serious?
I was.
That's my number 5 too. Is Bender.
Okay, good. Yeah, he's my number 5 then. Yep.
I think a 5 is the exact right place to put Bender.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's like I said, I'm not even sure I should have included him on the list. I mean, there's lots of good number 5s, but
he's really come up the rankings though in the last decade.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
10 years ago, no way would you put him on there. But now it's like Bender from Futurama. Which is that show canceled? They cancel it and restart it every year.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think it's still going.
Okay.
My number 4 is the Terminator.
Might be a little high for the Terminator, in my opinion. I could see the Terminator being lower. I wouldn't argue if it was 1 or 2 spots lower. I can understand it.
It's just, man, there's so many. So yeah, what's your number 4?
The Sentinels from X-Men.
Okay, that's.
If you grew up like I did, watching the X-Men animated series, the Sentinels came out, and the Sentinels were like, that was the greatest animated series of all time.
No, I mean, I get it. It's I don't think it. I think it's an honorable mention with all the other robots that are possible, but I think they're there. I mean, I have them on my honorable mention.
Okay, what's your number 3 then?
So my number 3 is I have 2. It's Wall-E and the Roomba. Figured you'd like that second one.
The Roomba.
Yeah.
Okay. The Roomba is like the first real personal robot that anybody has ever had.
Yep.
In some ways, if you said Roomba number 1, I don't know if I could kind of agree with you. Like, that's the first real experience with a robot that most people had. Like, there's a robot doing shit for you.
Yeah. Yep.
And it had like a little personality that you could give it. It was like a part of your house.
It was dumb as shit. They're still dumb as hell, but yeah, they are like I think they're the only universal robot that's distributed that you can buy like on a wide basis.
That's why I mean, you could make an argument that the Roomba should be number 1.
It's tough.
That's a good call.
It's tough, man. What's your number 3?
Wally's too high though for you. Wally is not. He doesn't have the kind of longevity, right? Like he's got to be in a couple more movies before Wally gets in.
I mean, I would agree to a certain degree, but his usefulness and resourcefulness gets him. I have a lot of trash robots coming up, I think. So that's
Okay.
That's a theme.
My number 3 is Terminator. I think that's the appropriate place for Terminator, not number 4. I think Terminator should be a little bit higher.
I mean, obviously, I dig it. I wasn't gonna put it any higher than 4. So
okay, what's your number 2?
Optimus Prime.
I'm interested to see what your number 1 is then. My number 1 is actually Optimus Prime. My number 2 is R2-D2.
That's my number 1.
We have reversed.
Yeah, and really, I could reverse either, like 2 to 1, 1 to 2. But I'm going strictly based upon popularity than usefulness. Like I mean, Optimus Prime by far, he's a badass. He'll fight for you. I mean, he saves the world. R2-D2 is, it is what it is. But I think on in terms of a popularity and knowing, I think more people could pick out R2-D2 than Optimus Prime.
I agree that R2-D2 is the more popular one, but Optimus Prime was that franchise, really. Like R2-D2, if he's not there, not that big of a deal.
Ooh, that's tough.
You don't need R2-D2, but you have to have Optimus Prime, which is why I think Optimus Prime is number 1.
You do have to have Optimus Prime, but to say that Star Wars could do without R2-D2, I don't know. That's a tough one. I can't agree with that.
I don't know what the difference between a robot, a cyborg, and an android are.
Well, now you just open up a can. We'll let everyone debate that. Because I'm not entirely sure either.
Okay, you go through your honorable mention while I look up what the difference between cyborg.
All right. Let's see here. So I have HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay.
Sojourner, that was the Mars rover of 1996 that gave the world its first kind of view of Mars. That was a huge deal. Data from Star Trek.
Data.
Whatever. Rosie from the Jetsons.
Those are good.
Bishop from Aliens.
Never seen that movie.
And Astro Boy.
Okay. I don't know if Mega Man is a robot, technically. I could throw Mega Man in there.
I mean, would you say Metroid from Metroid Prime is a robot? Or is that a cyborg?
No, that's a cyborg. Okay, so here's the difference. An android is a robot that is made to look and act like a human being. A cyborg is a living organism that has robotic or mechanical parts. So I don't think the Terminator is a cyborg.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's obviously strictly metal, so yeah, it's not a cyborg, I don't think.
So the Terminator is actually an android, whereas RoboCop is a cyborg, is how I would define it.
RoboCop, great.
Because RoboCop's alive, right?
Yeah, he's a human that gets shot and then he's brought back to life as a kind of what we talked about earlier.
Do you know the name of the guy who was shot? Who's the actual, like, the human who became RoboCop?
Brian Anderson.
Is that right?
No, it's not right. I don't know. I should know It's a disgrace I don't know.
RoboCop. It was filmed in Detroit.
It was, yes. They tried to get a statue of him put up.
Now you're gonna recognize it. Alex Murphy.
Ah.